What is your stand on the sentiments Tom is whipping?
All right, thank you very much. Firstly, I want to say that the primary role of every government anywhere in the world
Mm.
is to ensure the security and welfare of the people. That is very well encapsulated in the Nigeria's constitution. Section 14 sub 2b particularly provides that the security and welfare of the people is the primary purpose of government. And of course, in all documents that Nigeria is signatory to under the United Nations and the African Charter of Human and People's Rights, security of the people is the most important. So, that being said, I want to say, yeah, for a very long time, the people of Benin, most especially my local government, Guma and Makodi, and all the other areas along the Benue Valley, have suffered so much of insecurity, basically born out of headman attack and sometimes banditry. But in recent time, it's primarily headman attack. And going back to the other arm of your question, the sentiment the government is within there, I want to say, for me, I believe ardently that the the defection of Governor Otom to PDP from the APC had absolutely nothing to do with the issue of security of
It had
the.
nothing to do with
I
it.
don't believe that. It is primarily politics, 101% politics. Uh, this is,
And it was premeditated.
of course, of course, it's very evident that he wasn't having the structure of the APC in the state. And as a sitting governor, I expected him right from the inception of his government to try as much as possible to take charge of the structure of the APC in that state. But of course, he couldn't, basically because of how he came into the APC. He came into the APC through the back door, and he's also leaving through the back door. That is just
That's
a fact,
simple.
as simple as that.
All right. Now, looking at Benue as it is now, your community, Guma, is one of those communities that is worst affected by suspected herdsmen killings. Are the people back or they are still in IDPs?
Um, Majority of the people displaced are still in the IDP camps, and that's quite very unfortunate. Yeah, because we have incidences of some who tried to go back, and the next day they're being killed by Morojan headsmen. So those that were displaced as far back as last year have been in the IDP camps all the while, and I can't deny the fact that some have returned back, but that is quite an insignificant number of those are in the camp.
Quite an insignificant number. Now you're seeking to contest elections, and you're already a politician. You're seeking to contest election and represent the people. And the people, their main problem is insecurity. What would you want to achieve if you become their representative?
Thank you very much. First of all, by God's grace, when I get there into the House of Reps, the first bill I will sponsor will be the Benue Valley Security Development Commission bill. That bill will be modeled after the Marshall Plan. If you know the Marshall Plan of 1946, that was initiated by George Marshall, the then United States Secretary of State. The plan was meant to rebuild Europe and rehabilitate the people that were displaced by the Second World War in Europe. During the Second World War, almost half of Europe was destroyed. So that plan was meant to rebuild and rehabilitate and refurbish Europe. And for us, the Benue Valley Security Development Commission bill will be meant to, first of all, rebuild those areas that were destroyed, because it is the responsibility of government to protect these people and to protect their property. Now that their property, their houses were destroyed, the aim of that law is to get government to statutorily rebuild the houses, rebuild the schools, rebuild the churches, the markets that were destroyed. Then rehabilitate the people, pay them some commissions, so that they can restart their lives. Because many of these people have lost almost everything.
Everything.
Yes, exactly. Almost every. I have a lot of my people involved. My cousins, my uncles, my aunties. So government should take responsibility of rehabilitating these people and rebuilding these people, and then instituting some security checks and security points at the flash points along the Benue valleys in order to checkmate the growing incidence of these attacks. So that will be part of the aim of that bill.
Yeah, but knowing that as a House of Reps member, there is very little you can do, even in a situation where many before you have been able to do nothing. What are your plans to get around it?
No one has initiated this bill yet. We know that when the militancy was happening, was so rife in the Niger Delta, they brought up under the Obasanjo administration, they brought up the Niger Delta Development Commission, and it was able to a very great extent checkmate some of these incidences, and then rebuild many of the places that were destroyed. Up to now, the NDDC is doing so much to giving so much to the Niger Delta.
Yeah,
and then there is something like that.
But some might argue that would we keep setting up commissions, development commissions everywhere, when there are statutory bodies that should ordinarily do that?
Yeah, but those statutory bodies has failed. That's number one. And then number two is the fact that it has happened already. So how do you reintegrate these people? How do you rehabilitate them? How do you rebuild the lost villages? You understand? So we need something statutorily developed like this kind of commission to be able to handle this responsibility. So far, there's none.
So far, there's none.
Exactly.
Now, the occupation of villages and farmlands by the supposed herdsmen, is there any way you have observed the Benue State government working to get back these villages to their original owners?
All right, to be fair to the Benue State government, headed by Governor Tom, they have some level of limitations to what they can do. The governor is just as chief security officer of the state. In quotes, it's quite ceremonial. We know that, yeah, on paper, it's quite ceremonial. He doesn't have the real power to enforce any kind of security in terms of breaches, So we know that it's just on paper and it's quite ceremonial. But to be quite fair to him, has done quite credibly well in terms of trying to see that these people go back and get rehabilitated. We know that lots of things have been happening at the IDP camps. The government have been trying as much as possible to see that they provide succor to those in the IDP camps. They've been trying to align with the security agencies to provide a conducive environment in those villages that were quite displaced so that people can go back and get settled. I want to say, yes, quite a number of villages have been reoccupied by the displaced people, but many others are still left desolate and vacant.
All right, now looking at the politics of Benue, how do you intend to succeed without a godfather? Or you have one?
Thank you very much. I don't have a godfather. I have God the Father, the God Almighty.
Oh, you have God
the Father. He's the biggest of all godfathers, And I think politics is all about the people. For us, we have the people with us. We have the mass of the people with us. What I only pray and crave for is for us to always provide that enabling environment to make the voices of the people heard and become very resonant. What has been happening all the while is that we don't respect the voice of the people. It's happened to me in 2014 when I contested and won the APC primaries, despite all odds against me. Do you understand? Despite the fact that the godfather of the APC, that's the leader of the APC in the state, and the entirety of the party apparatus of the APC stood against me. But the people said, it must be me. And I won. But at the end of the day,
you won.
Of course, at the end of the day, something just very funny, completely out of democratic norms.
Take us through how you won the primaries of the APC and you still are not a member of the House of Representatives, despite the fact that that seat is still being occupied by an APC person.
All right, thank you very much. In December 2014, 7th December to be precise, I contested with just one opponent, one other opponent, Tehide Utan, the immediate past special assistant to the governor on social investment in Benue State. I defeated him at the primaries of the APC. But because the party leadership never really wanted to get my name over to INEC, and the following day they presented certificate of returns to the loser.
Really?
Yes. So I had to go to the. I had to
Presented a
appeal
certificate of return
to the loser. Exactly. In Nigeria's democracy, anything can happen, and it's quite very funny. These are the kind of vices we want to change in our democratic process. So I now invoke the provisions of the APC constitution by appealing to the National Assembly Appeal Commission, Appeal Committee of the party. They came to Benue State, did their investigation. The appeal committee was headed by one Apostle Godwin from Cross River. They returned my victory back to me, and it is well recorded in the APC secretariat. The report is there. And but at the end of the day, neither me nor my original opponent, Engineer Utan, had their names sent to INEC. They now imported the current occupant of the seat, Dixon Taki, who was in PDP, who contested and lost under the PDP. But because he was coming to the APC with Governor Otom after our primaries, and they decided to now send his name, suppress my name and send his own name to INEC. So it was, in short, it is quite out of this world, It was one of the very saddest aspects of the very crazy thing we do here in the name of democracy. So I decided to go to the court. The case terminated just about 3 months ago at the Supreme Court.
Wow.
Yeah, while we're in the court.
So you're free to talk about it now.
Exactly, exactly. It's not sub judice because it's been done and dusted. We lost in the Supreme Court on a very simple aspect of the fact that we never filed and obtained the leave of the court. Technicality.
What does that mean?
Technicality. It is the law that when some of the grounds of appeal are grounds of mixed law and fact, then you need the leave of court.
Okay.
Yeah, but when the grounds are strictly grounds of law, you don't need leave of court. So sometimes it's quite very difficult to there's a very thin line between mixed law and fact.
You
and
can blame
law.
it on the inexperience of your lawyer or your counsel.
Yeah, and he's a senior advocate. I'm sorry, but that was what happened. And even me, who's a very young lawyer, reminded him several times that we needed to file leave of court in this. Where he said, no, there's no need because these grounds are strictly grounds of law. But in our profession, we're just like the military. I'm just like a sergeant in the profession. A senior advocate is like a general, so there's a level to which you can argue with him, But it's so unfortunate. I should have insisted because it's my own case.
Yeah.
I should have insisted because there's no pain and there's no penalty for filing the leave of court even when you are not supposed to file. Because at the end of the day, the court will just say, no, you needed not file this leave of court because there are grounds of law. So, but from the abundance of caution, we needed to have filed the leave of court. We needed to have secured it, but we didn't. So,
but
on 20th April,
was a significant ground for judgment to be passed not in your favor.
Yeah, but that's what the Supreme Court said. It's technical. Do you understand? We ought to have sought and obtained the leave of court. We didn't. So they decided that case on technicality and not the merit. The entirety of the merit was thrown aside, And it's quite unfortunate. That's one aspect of the Nigerian judiciary that I'm not quite comfortable with. Because in other climes, when
like
a case,
London, where
exactly, when a case is very clearly meritorious, you should do everything possible to make sure you attend to it on its merits. So I expected, even if we failed to obtain that leave of court, I expected the Supreme Court to at the end say we should have gotten the leave of court. They will want to give us room to still obtain that leave of court so that they can go into the merit of the case. It happens.
It happens. But
yeah.
They were unable to do that.
Yes, but they were unable to do that. It's quite unfortunate.
Is it possible that you were boxed out because of not having enough resources?
It's possible. There's nothing that's not impossible in Nigeria.
There's nothing that is not impossible.
Of
in
course.
Nigeria. Now you're a young man and you belong to this our generation that wants change, not too young to run, not too young to run. Looking at the way Benue State has been so battered by insecurity, is there any hope and promise for Benue? Because investors will hesitate to come and invest in Benue. Tourism will be on the low. Social activities will be on the low. What would you want done in Benue to begin to upgrade it from where it is now?
Thank you very much. Firstly, it is the responsibility of government, like I said, to ensure the security of lives and property, and that is the first stage towards uplifting Benue. We have to make sure all the areas devastated are rebuilt and made very safe. We have to ensure that there's absolute security, because without security, we cannot do any of the things you've just listed. So first of all, we have to ensure that the government of the day, and that is the federal government, must make everything possible to make sure that absolute peace, absolute security returns to Benue. And thereafter, we can rebuild Benue. It's quite very, for me, I feel that what is happening right now is just a phase. It cannot be persistent. It cannot constantly remain the same, you know. There must come a time that this phase must be done with. And I believe this is such a time that we have to make sure this thing never happens again. Our people are made safe. We've rebuilt our communities, and we'll go about doing our duties and obligations as citizens of this country. You know, our people are basically farmers. And Makurdi, which is the headquarters of my constituency and the headquarters of the state, for instance, is a civil service state. We're quite happy with what we're doing. And by the time we return peace to our environment, our people will continue with exactly what they're doing. And with the necessary support of government, I believe there's nothing we cannot achieve as a people. The president was sick. He was abroad. That was last year for over 100 days. And when he came back, I wrote an open letter to him. I was very surprised to see that it was published in about 3 dailies, full pages, without me paying anything, you know, because it seems it's really interests most Nigerians who were able to read it through it last year. I wrote it because we love the president. We love the person of Muhammadu Buhari for what he represents. Integrity. He stands out in a committee of our former leaders, you know. He's quite someone that you can always vouch for his integrity and his anti-corruption stance, you know, his modesty, the way he handles life, you know. But I actually never expected him to contest again.
You don't expect him to contest again?
Yes, I expected him to have used the first 4 years to build veritable institutions in Nigeria. What we're lacking right now, institutions. The system doesn't just work. We're having powerful people more than
hold on.
institutions.
Are you saying you are not on the same page with President Buhari in his bid to contest 2019?
Incidentally, I'm in a different party now. So I'll choose
but as a unified leader.
Yeah, but the truth of the matter is he still stands above board when compared to many people who are contesting for president today.
Okay.
Yes, he still stands above board.
That's honest, to be honest.
To be honest. To be sincere. But I belong to a different party. I want the presidential the presidential candidate of my party to emerge as the president of Nigeria, so that we can rebuild this country. I expected the first 4 years of President Buhari to be centered strictly on the pillars of which he was able to come on board. Those pillars were the pillars of rebuilding our economy, ensuring adequate security, and of course fighting corruption.
And strengthening our laws.
Exactly. You know, and when you strengthen our laws, you strengthen the institutions. What is lacking in this country today is the absence of a very virile, vibrant system. We have a system that is subdued and subjugated, and you have people rise above the system. You have a situation where we have people who are more powerful than the system. And no country goes well with such kind of order. Any country that is very developed today It's a country that set forth the system ahead of the people. But by the time you allow the people to be more powerful than the system, you find stagnation in the polity, like what we're witnessing. We're not making headway because people are more powerful than the system. When we are talking of anti-corruption, we see it quite evidently clear that to a very great extent, the fight against corruption is one-sided. You find people who are in the government who have very strong corrupt cases, but nothing has been done so far against them, you know. And then you find people who have been raising their voices against government, and then the next day you see the EFCC on their doorstep. So it's quite unfortunate. This is exactly the scenario I'm trying to paint. That we're trying to build powerful people ahead of powerful institutions.
Even in this government.
In this government, it is very evident.
You were arrested on June 11, 2017 in Benue, and you spent a night in a jail cell. What led to your arrest?
I never knew you all have these facts, you know. In any case, it was quite popular last year. If you go to Google and just type free Frank Utoo, you just see more than 100 sites and blogs.
Hashtags.
Yes. It was quite a very nasty experience. It was quite very stupid, actually. It was instigated by the party chairman of APC in Benue State, one Abayaru.
You were abducted.
Exactly. I was in company of my kids in Guarimpa, and then all of a sudden, just say a vehicle just passed by. The next thing, I was just pushed into the vehicle. Yeah, exactly. And it's quite nasty.
And you were driven to Benue straight.
Yes, and it happened that those guys were police. It was while we were in the vehicle that they were able to show me their warrant, you know, and their IDs. I was like, and the warrant, of course, wasn't properly endorsed because they moved from Benue to Abuja. So a magistrate in Abuja needed to have endorsed that warrant for it to be valid. I asked
in Benue.
No, nothing happened because it was on Sunday. Okay. It was on Saturday rather, and I was released on Sunday. So I still have an opening to sue for enforcement of fundamental human rights, you know.
Which you did not.
Of course, it is not statute bar. I can decide to do it at any time. So I was maybe I will do it when the guy doesn't have money. Now he has money. So
now he has money.
I'll just when he doesn't have money, I'll just sue for
that's
brilliant. 2 billion naira damages, you know.
All right, there's a message here that says, "Excellent morning, Martin and guest. My question is that what platform is the guest planning to use to actualize his desire of coming to the National Assembly in Abuja, considering APC is losing ground in Benue State?" This one came from Chuks Ihanyi from Apple.
Yes, Mr. Chuks, I'm contesting under the Social Democratic Party, SDP.
Okay.
First of all, I keep learning the same lessons over and over again. The fact that we're practicing just civil rule without absolute democracy, because democracy basically is built on respect for individual rights. You know, it's a doctrine that seeks to encapsulate individual rights, majority rights, and of course seeks to respect the voice of the people. You were talking regarding my abduction yesterday, last year. First of all, the adoption violates every norm of decency and law, but of course it happened. And when I was abducted and detained in Makurdi, the people were so resonant in their voices. In short, it was they locked down the cyberspace of Benue with that news that the police had to release me on Sunday, a day that they say the police do not always release accused persons, you know, but they just had to, because of the kind of pressure that was coming from all quarters.
Wow. We learned from England. Why are we still not doing it right?
Like I said earlier, it's just
what kind of reforms would you want to see in our judiciary that Buhari has been unable to do?
The judicial reforms in Nigeria is not the responsibility of Buhari. It's the responsibility of the judiciary itself, you know, and the Nigerian Bar Association. The leadership of the NBA have been trying as much as possible to bring in reforms, and so is the NJC too, the National Judicial Council. but to a very great extent, we're still not moving as fast as we should be. I tell you today that my case in court in the last 3 years has exposed me to something so major. And very, very interesting is the fact that these are my two primary careers in life, the law and politics. And so I was in court on political matter. I was able to get myself see face to face with what happens in the courts and what happens in the legal profession, and what happens in politics. I want to tell you that, man, there's so much to be desired in this country. It's quite unfortunate.
So much to be desired.
Exactly, and it is the responsibility of my generation to stand up and get things done rightly, because the generation that has ruled Nigeria up to this day has done so much to stagnate our growth. They've done so much to bequeath to us a stinking system, a system that stinks. We need to deodorize this system and to get it working. I'm telling you that our judicial system is not working as it should be. The bar system in Nigeria is not working. 50% of, well, you can't say it's less than 50%.
Okay.
If it's less than 50%, then
there will be no courts.
No, we won't have a country. Yeah, but it's on the average. I can mark them good, not to talk of very good. You understand? It's on the average, sincerely speaking. It is in Nigeria that a matter will be in court and you get to hear people boast about the outcome. It is only in this country. A matter will be in court and people will be boasting about its outcome. And let me tell you, and this goes out to the people that are on the bench, that they should know this, that whatever decision they take, people always have that clear picture. In other places, it says justice should not just be done, but should be seen to be done by the people on the streets. That in this matter, what is the average person on the street saying? Is justice done in the matter? But in Nigeria, always when pronouncements are made, you see the people on the street will be having a different notion. This is because in many cases, the real justice of the matter was not really done. So in Nigeria, we still have a long way to go in order in restructuring our judicial system. Exactly, so that it be in line with global best practices.
All right, let's go back to the issue of your letter to the president. There was one point that was on the realm of rumor until I saw it again in your letter, where you said that the president was poisoned by people that felt intimidated. Do you have proof of that?
No, I say we heard. So it was just an allegation, So
it was also speculative.
Yeah, it was not quite categorical. It was quite
but nobody
speculative.
has called your attention to that fact that you lied or you said the truth.
No one.
No one.
Rather, they published it.
They publish it.
Yes.
Wholesale.
Yes.
So
because it was just within the realm of allegation, everyone heard that was what happened. Sort of,
So it's in paper.
Yes.
Wow. All right. So Frank, in the first 100 days, you might be elected to be the House of Reps member. You don't have any budget. You don't run any budget.
Correct.
And we've seen elected representatives go forward, or elected governors, even when they sit there, they now start saying that they didn't meet any money here, or there's no money, or they've not paid us, this and that. Even the case of Benue State, where the governor has not been paying salaries shamelessly. Are you going to toe that path of not providing the needed democracy dividends to the people that have high expectations of you?
Thank you very much, Martins. I think first of all, we have to understand the rules of each of these arm of government in a democracy. That is one area that we've completely tried to keep aside, and we're not so willing to understand the various roles that these organs of government statutorily mandated to play. You understand? We have a situation in a country like Nigeria where when you are elected to go to the parliament, you see people, instead of doing their parliamentary responsibility as it should be, they'll keep it aside and be going back to the villages, digging boreholes, putting building bridges and culverts. That's not the responsibility. It's true. In Nigeria, okay, I appreciate the fact that there's something called constituency project in Nigeria,
Hold
it's
on,
quite conventional.
You break it down. Let's take this call out.
But that may not be absolutely correct, because first and foremost, up to December last year, Oton belonged to a committee, a certain group that endorsed Buhari for second term. You know, he was part of it. They held their meeting in Abuja here. Senator Akume was there, Governor Oton was there. They endorsed Buhari for second term, and he keeps saying that he will stay in APC till the very end. You know, and let me tell you something about the anti-open grazing bill. That is the complete product of the Benue people, 101%. Initially, some of us were involved in that bill. You know, I belong to an organization in Abuja here called VATI, Vanguard Against Thief Massacre, and then there is an organization
Vanguard against Thief
Massacre, VATI, yeah, and then there's an organization in Benue called MAFO, Movement Against Fulani Occupation. They started this arrangement for the initiation of this bill. I'm telling you that the government never supported it when it started.
Anti-grazing.
Yes, the same Otom government sponsored many people to be in our midst to scuttle all our plans. Yes, it's very clear. It's very clear out there. In Mafo, in Makodi, on several occasions they tried to disrupt their sittings. In Abuja, in Vatim sittings, they sponsor some people to be in our midst so that they will
where
scatter.
Your office is.
Exactly, so that they scatter us, you know. So, but of course, at the end of the day, it became very resonant that is the voice of the Benue people in entirety. So the government only cast
really Otom was not.
No, initially when we started all this, yes, you know, but because even when we went for public hearing on that, what the government sponsored was a different bill. The executive bill that came from the government was a livestock promotion bill. It was meant to even give so much to the Fulanis. That's the truth, you know. But ours was the anti-open grazing, the open grazing prohibition bill. And at the end of the day, there at the open hearing, the entirety of the Benue people that cuts across the various segment of the Benue society, the clergy, the market women, the students, the university lecturers, the mass of the people, we took one position that no, we are not going with the livestock promotion bill that is sponsored by the government. We are going with the people's bill, the open grazing prohibition bill. The Benue state government at the end of the day had no choice than to adopt the people's bill. So when you are talking to us that belong to, when Benue is talking to outsiders, yeah, we come as Benue, we support our governor for what he's done. But when we go back to Benue, we point fingers at you, we say, you never supported this initially. So I don't understand why you have to take credit.
So the point the last caller Ola is making is that
I understand his point. He was trying to say it. He was trying to say that was the major reason why the governor left the party, and I was saying no. I said no because the governor had no structure in APC. He tried not to have structure up to the time that APC were to do their congresses in the early part of this year, world, local government, and state congresses. Instead of the governor to capitalize on that and then to plant in his own structure, he allowed Senator Akume to say that the structure that have been existing since 2014 should remain. Yes. So it means that the governor could not even inject anybody inside the structure. So it's no longer his party. The APC structure in Benue State, APC had her congresses this year. Local government, state,
and what?
Up to federal level, and that's why you have an Adams Oshomole replacing Oyegu.
Yeah.
But in Benue, it is the same structure of 2014
that is still there.
That is still there up to this day. So the same Abayaro, who has been the chairman.
So Otom has to leave.
Of course, the structure is not in his hands, so Akume can do and undo in the APC.
All right, here are some messages. They say, I know people refer to Benue State as a civil service state. What has the guest got up his sleeves to fast-track the development of the tourism potentials in Benue? And in addition to harness the huge potential of the Benue River. Chuksihai sent that message. There are other messages. Let me just read them out to you so that you can react to them at one time. This one says, morning dear Martin and greetings, our guest. I wish him well as long as he will give priority to the people. Those who are with the people are the majority. Never allow your personal interest to overshadow the collective desires of your people. Never place your trust in Godfather but in the people. Finally, you must be honest. Regards, Mayowa sent that from Kabul.
Thank you very much.
It's a piece of advice. So, talking about the tourism potentials of Benue, tourism cannot take place in Benue with insecurity. You know that.
Correct. I've said it earlier that first of all we have to have an enabling environment, and of course, when I get into the House of Reps by God's grace, the area of tourism will be addressed in terms of sponsoring relevant motions and sponsoring bills and oversight of Ministry of Tourism, for instance, get them to inject some projects in Benue State. First of all, the Benue River, for instance, is the second biggest river in Nigeria. We need to get it dredged so that tourism activities will happen maximally very well in the using River Benue.
Dredge
You know?
from Cameroon axis or from
Yeah,
from
right,
upland.
From yeah, it needs to be. We don't need to have such kind of rivers in Nigeria where the half of the river is just sand.
It's
You know,
just-
it's a river and it should serve as a complete tourism site, and it should also serve as a source of revenue generation for the state. You know, with activities, riverine activities, water activities, fishing, and the rest. And we also have like the Ikyoge Cattle Ranch. You know, it's a tourism site in Benue. Yeah, if we can develop that kind of ranch and provide it to people who rent, like the headsmen, you know, rent and graze their cattle there. We have other sites, even within Makodi environs. You know, there are a lot of tourism sites. The zoo in Makodi, for instance, is a pity. It's in a sorry site, and it
Yeah,
happens to
but when
most
civil
zoos in
servants are
Nigeria.
not paid. How can animals in the zoo be fed?
Yeah, so you see that there are no even children's playgrounds in Makodi, and it's quite very sad. So government need to look into these areas because in many other countries, tourism play a very pivotal role in revenue generation. You know, I schooled in Malaysia before going to school in the UK, and Malaysia tourism is like the third source of revenue for Malaysia. You find the number of visitors that come into Malaysia each month in their millions just for tourism, for recreation. We can afford to do that. We shouldn't just basically be a civil service state depending on the federal allocation each year, you know, each month. We should be able to generate something within the various states in Nigeria, you know, through tourism, through agriculture, through industries and
All right.
SMEs.
All right, we have just 3 minutes before we sign off. Let me just allow you to sum up this thing like this. Now, the representative of Guma in the House of Reps right now, hasn't he given the quality representation that is required that you think he needs to be replaced?
Okay, thank you very much.
That's on the final.
Thank
note.
you, thank you very much. Like I said earlier, we've completely not been able to keep abreast with what is expected of a legislator. There are three primary responsibilities of a legislator. First of all, is lawmaking. How many laws was he able to sponsor? None. And when we're talking of laws, I'm not talking of bill. You just go and bring a bill that doesn't even pass through first reading. You should be able to research properly to know that these are areas that we need laws. These are areas that the laws need to be revised. None has been done so far. You know, the other aspect of the other responsibility of a lawmaker is the responsibility of representation. Representation, trying to get work done in your constituency, try to get them captured in the budget. Because as a lawmaker, you are primarily responsible. You are very well involved in the budget process. You know, so to what extent were they able to bring in projects within Makodi and Guma and get them captured in the federal budget, in the budget of Ministry of Agri, for instance, budget of Ministry of Industry, budget of Ministry of Transport? None has been done. We only find lawmakers who are quite only contented with just getting their constituency project and getting boreholes dug somewhere in the constituency, culvert. Those are responsibilities of local government chairmen.
Does that demonstrate lack of capacity?
Exactly, and lack of misplacement of responsibility. For our democracy to grow, each and every elected public officer should exactly know his exact job description. If you are involved in the judiciary, know that this is your job description. If you are involved in the legislature, know that this is where you should prioritize. If you are involved in the executive, know that, of course, you are expected to execute, implement these projects, execute these projects. But for lawmaker, and then the third responsibility is, of course, oversight. When you succeed in getting things captured in your budget, oversight those ministries, oversight those projects to make sure they are completely implemented.
These are
And
the
then
things that are lacking.
Of course, we find lawmakers who just go into the parliament, who are quite contented with just going back home and putting up some forms of building some forms of culvert or classroom block that's meant for UBEC. Of course, I am not saying constituency projects should not be captured. It's quite conventional in our democracy that the lawmakers are quite they are always giving some constituency allowances for constituency projects. But that should be the secondary responsibility of a lawmaker. The primary responsibility of lawmaking, moving very strong motions on the floor. You see, I like Dino, for instance.
Dino Melai.
Of course, he has been doing exactly what is expected of a lawmaker. Dino has moved some very important motions in this country that were very defining. I remember there was a time that the Nigerian custom just woke up one day and said they will make sure they will make sure every car in Nigeria has a custom duties, because they've realized that most
duties are fake.
Yeah, are fake, or people don't really pay at the point of entry into the country. And so they are going to start searching all cars. They will stop all cars in Nigeria and search to make sure that every person paid for the deserved custom duty of that car. And you know, it could have brought so much hardships to Nigerians. Dino stood up and said, no. If custom had allowed a car to enter the country without custom duties, it is failure on her part, not on the part of the people using the car today. And that was how it died a natural death. So those are the kind of motions we expect our legislators to move. And when we are moving a motion, of course you are elected to go into the House of Reps to represent your constituency, but to make law for the good governance of Nigeria. And so the motions should reflect what is happening in the country.